Margaret stood in the doorway of the barn, sunlight pouring over her shoulders like warm Seriffa hair the color of winter wheat loose down her back, held Henry's old straight razor in one hand and a look in her eyes that could stop a runaway. Team Yushavesh said slow and steady, and I'll kill you. Henry sat on the milking stool, shirt unbuttoned from the heat, his beard grown wild these past months, thick and silver and tangled as the cheatgrass out along the fence line had been reaching for the little tin of shaving soap when her voice floated in soft as thistledown, but carrying the same weight it had the day she told him their boy was shipping out in '44. He let his hand rested it on his knee and looked up at the woman he had married in 1951, the day the preacher said forever, and the sky answered with rain so gentle it felt like blessing. Maggie said kid a man ought to look decent for his own wife. She stepped closer, bare feet silent on the packed earth hem of her faded blue house dress, brushing her ankles, same dress she wore the morning he came home from Korea, minus one sleeve of his uniform and plus one limp that never quite left. You think decent is a smooth chinch? Asked, crossing the space between them. You think I married a chin? Henry started to smile, fit, slow, crooked smile that used to make her knees forget their purpose, but she knelt before he could answer, set the razor on the floor like it was something sacred, and took his face in both her hands. Look at me, Henry James. He did looked right into those hazel eyes that had seen him through every season, through burying parents' throw, burying a son throw, nights when the wind howled so lonely it rattled the windows like bones. This beard, said, running her thumbs through the coarse silver, this beard grew while you sat up with me when the cancer tried to take meat, grew while you carried me to the porch so I could watch the sunrise when the medicine made me too weak to walk. It grew while you held my hand and told me stories about when we were young and stupid and dancing in the kitchen to a radio that only caught one squelch, and she leaned closer until he could smell the lavender water she still dabbed behind her ears. Every Sunday, without fail, every one of these harsh whispered as a prayer. You prayed over every tangle as a night you didn't sleep so I could die. Look at this face and I see mercy, Henry. I see the man who refused to let me go even when the doctors said maybe it was time. Henry's eyes filled slow and quiet, the way a stock pond fills after spring rain. Tried to swallow, but the lump was too big. I just thought Manajidu might want the old me back. Margaret smiled, then soft as bread fresh from the oven, and pressed her forehead to his. The old you, Sadie's right here under all this grace, and I love him more today, Beck, as he stayed back as he grew this wild beautiful proof that love doesn't quit. She reached down, picked up the razor, and with great cursed it high on the shelf beside the lantern, oil out of reach, out of mind. Then she took his rough hands, pulled him to standing, and let him out into the late afternoon light. Come on, she said, supper's almost red yond. Afterward we'll sit on the porch. You can tell me again about the night you proposed with the ring you bought from your poker winnings, and I'll pretend I didn't already know you cheated so you could afford it. Henry laughed. Thina sound like gravel, turning to music, and wrapped his arm around her waist, felt the familiar curve that it carried for children and more joy than any one woman ought to be allowed. They walked slow toward the house, his beard brushing her temple, her hand tucked safe in the back pocket of his overall, the way it had been since they were teenagers, stealing kisses behind the church. And as the screen door creaked its welcome, Margaret looked back once at the bonnet, the razor resting peaceful on the shelf, and she thought some things are meant to stay, what faces are meant to carry their whole story right out, where the world can see in some love after all the years, after all the leaving and staying, after all the almost losing. Some love just gets better when you let it grow untamed. She squeezed his hand, the calluses that matched her own, and stepped over the threshold into the quiet golden evening where the coffee was still hot and the man she loved, beard and all, was already home. Years later, long after the doctor had said the word remission like a gift. Nobody dared unwrap the beard, had turned pure winter white, thick as a January drift, and Margaret still ran her fingers through it every morning, while Henry sat at the kitchen table in his thermal shirt waiting for coffee to finish its slow percolate. The children came home that October, all four of them with their own children, tugging at coattails. The house suddenly loud again with boots and laughter and the smell of little boys who had been chasing chickens. Margaret stood at the stove, turning pancakes the size of wagon wheels. Her hair now the color of storm clouds. Tied back with the same red ribbon she wore the day Henry first kissed her in 1949. Behind the bleachers at the county fair. Henry watched her from his chair. The way he always did, quiet and grateful, as if every morning she rose was a small miracle he hadn't earned. Their youngest granddaughter, Clara, 6 years old, with freckles like spilled cinnamon, climbed into his lap and took hold of the beard with both hands. Grandpa, she said solemnly, do you have a cloud on your face? The room went still for a heartbeat, and soft laughter rippled around the table. Henry looked at Margaret across the griddle, saw the shine in her eyes that meant she was remembering too, because he said slow, a long time ago Grandma almost floated away and I needed something to hold on to, so the good Lord gave me this cloud, and every night I thanked him for it. Clara considered this, then laid her cheek against the softness. It's warm, she announced, like the kittens in the barn. Margaret turned from the stove, wiped her hands on the apron that used to be blue and was now mostly memories, and came to stand behind Henry's chairs. She rested her hands on his shoulders, leaned down until her lips brushed the top of his ear tell her the rest, she whispered so only he could hear. Tell her why we never cut it. Henry cleared his throat, the way men do when feelings crowd too close. Well, little one, he began. When Grandma was real sick, she made me promise, said, if I shaved this beard she'd come back and haunt me proper. And I believed her, still do, because your grandma is the stubbornest woman the good Lord ever stitched together, and I wasn't about to test her. Clara giggled. The sound bright as bells. On Christmas morning their oldest son will now gray himself at the temples. Leaned back in his chair and smiled at his mother. You never told us that part, Mama. Some stories, Margaret answered. Are just between two people and the years that keep them later after. Plates were empty and the children had scattered to the hayloft. Margaret and Henry walked slow down the lane, past the corral where the old mare lifted her head and nickered past the cottonwood that still held the rope swing he'd hung the summer. Eisenhower was president. The wind carried the smell of wood smoke and fallen leaves, and Henry's hand found hers the way it always had. No searching, just knowing where home was. You know, he said, I still think about shaving it sometimes just to see if you'd really come after me. Margaret stopped walking, turned to face reached up and took the beard in both hands, the way Clara had, only gentler, the way you hold something holy. Try it, she said, soft, and I'll chase you clean to the pearly gates. And when St. Peter asks why I'm dragging a bald-chinned man by the ear, tell him love made me do it. Henry laughed, then low and easy, and pulled her close, felt her heartbeat steady against his own. They stood there a long time. 2 old cottonwoods rooted deep. Leaves turning loose and drifting down around them like slow gold snow. And somewhere in the quiet, Margaret heard the same promise she had heard every day since the night he grew the first silver strand. I'm still here, I'm still holding on, I'm still yours. She pressed her face into the cloud on his face, breathed him in, and whispered the words she had never stopped saying, not once, not even on the hardest days. Thank you for staying wild for me. Henry kissed the top of her head, felt the ribbon soft under his lips, and answered the only way he knew how. Thank you for being worth every untamed day. The sun dipped low, painting the sky the color of the ribbon in her hair, and they walked on home. Slow and certain, beard and ribbon promise an answer woven together stronger than any blade could ever cut.